Please.
Candace Owens signed with the Daily Wire a couple of years ago. Daily Wire is a massive conservative media outlet. It was founded by Ben Shapiro. He doesn't run it anymore, despite what people believe. But it was founded by him and Jeremy Boring, and it's become a Goliath. It's included people like Jordan Peterson now, Candace Owens. They have a bunch of homegrown stars like what's her name? The Comments List girl. What's her name? Brett Cooper, Matt Walsh. What is a Woman? And so they produce a ton of content. Fascinating company, fascinating, doing interesting things. They bring in Candace Owens, and Candace had friction with them from the jump. This got amped up with the whole Gaza attack on Israel back on October 7th. There was a lot of sniping, a lot of back and forth. And we hit a crescendo not long ago. So I'd like to show some of Candace's last appearance on Daily Wire, in Daily Wire World. This is 90 seconds.
Because what it registers to me as is power. Real power hiding behind a veneer of victimhood, the kind of power that can take somebody out and end their entire career if that person says something that they don't like. And in this case, it's not that I'm saying things that they don't like, it's that I'm refusing to allow my voice to be controlled. I want to be clear to you guys. I'm going to be honest with you because everybody's noticing it. Every single political commentator in America, every single one of them knows this, that if you do not step out and say things that are radically pro-Israel, or if you are too quiet on certain narratives and they want you to be radically pro-Israel, you can lose everything. That's truth. That is a fact. I'm not feeling like I need to hide from that anymore or be afraid to say it, rather, is a better way to say it, because I've endured this for years. I'm just at the end of my rope. I have given so much rope here and I am just done with it. Every person that you are a fan of, they know this. Every person that you line up to go hear speak, they know this. Again, it's not even on the basis of what you say. It can sometimes be on the basis of what you don't say. That an entire mob will assemble, they'll write piece after piece after piece until you subjugate. If you don't subjugate, the bounty grows larger. So yes, there was a large bounty on my head for the crime of refusing to suddenly hate Muslims and to condone Muslims getting bombed following October 7th. Everybody can see that. I have said, because what it registers to me as.
Before we go forward, do you think she's truthful, she's accurate? What are your thoughts on what she said?
I mean, I don't know I really value Candace Owens, but that's because I can turn the dial down on her. In other words, when I hear her talk, I filter it and I know she turns the dial up with pretty much anything she says, right? You have to kind of bring it back to a frequency where it's not as bombastic. I don't know. I mean, I guess to some degree we maybe should presume that she was experiencing this friction within the Daily Wire power structure, but then is also playing it up to her fans to kind of be Pat McAfee of the conservative sphere. And look, rock bands have done this forever. Oh, the label doesn't want us. The man doesn't want us to say, blah, blah, blah. They're keeping us down. I mean, I don't know to what degree she's like wearing that, you know?
I came to a very similar conclusion. I do think that she's ramping it up. I mean, let's look at her next move. You know, that sort of says it.
And I mean, maybe she smells an opportunity like, oh, now that it is heretical to say anything against Israel in conservative circles, here's my opportunity to create this big dust cloud where I will get people to follow me who feel alienated.
Welcome to my locals page. So much to talk about. Obviously, I'm going to take a couple of weeks here just to rebuild and to refocus and to create something that is actually mine and something that can't be threatened or taken because it belongs to me. I can't tell you enough how much your support has meant to me over the years. We're just getting started. Join the locals page. Obviously, here you can support me and my work as an independent journalist, as an independent podcaster. We're still going to be doing 5 days a week. There'll be tons of announcements coming in the next couple of weeks. And I guess the last thing I want to say is thank you for those of you that don't want to be on locals and just.
So she clearly, to your point, perhaps she is seeing a lane here, an opportunity here, and a niche within a niche inside of conservative media, where it's like, hey, I feel like within one of the, as Steven Crowder called it last year in a different kerfuffle, big C conservative media, that there certain things are permitted and certain things are not permitted.
Sure.
And maybe she found one of them at least within that institution. I don't know that you could find that everywhere. I know Tammy Lauren found that with The Blaze. That was a kerfuffle a couple years ago. Tammy Lauren is not anti-abortion. She's I guess pro-choice is the phrase. So yet at the Blaze, Glenn Beck lost his mind and
Sure.
and basically, I wouldn't say fired her, because the way the Blaze works, it's not exactly a fire, it's a contractual thing. It's kind of a partnership kind of deal. So
right.
And then she of course lands at Fox. And the question was, did she do it? Did she? By the way, from what I've seen of her at Fox, she has not gone back there since.
To the abortion issue?
Not at all. So did she do it because she smelled an opportunity to level up and go to Fox? Or in this case, maybe with Candace, level up and go on her own? Or because these are, or is it because it's a big flashpoint for them? Maybe it's a combination of both.
I wonder
about it being both.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's funny is, even though I think Candace Owens turns the dial up, she doesn't strike me as particularly insincere, if that makes any sense. I think she sort of brightens the saturation on what she's presenting, but I don't think she's speaking out against Israel just to be just to capitalize. I think she has a lot of people who are drawn to becoming these voices do so because they have a lot of oppositional energy in them to rail against where they feel their perspectives are being constrained. And so it's only inevitable that some of them are going to feel that within the conservative media ecosystem, once they're no longer just railing against quote unquote the left, they're going to hit those walls. And as we can see, the conservative sphere has its own version of wokeness anyway.
Sure.
So you can become a heretic within that. And I think she was probably feeling legit frustration. I mean, this is somebody who said, fuck Ukraine. Didn't she say something like that? Or I don't care about, I don't give a damn about Ukraine.
Like that.
Yeah. It was so. I think that no matter how much of a performance we see from her, I think it stems from her actual instincts as a person to respond to being controlled in what she can think and say. And she doesn't like that.
I also think it's because they were a bad match to begin with.
Why do you say that?
I believe that Candace Owens has seen herself as a conservative Oprah-like figure,
Hmm.
a conservative Megyn Kelly,
Okay.
a larger figure. She looks at a person like Ben Shapiro as a peer.
Okay. Right. Not
And
as her boss.
not as her boss. Yeah. I think there's a reason why when we see this with a lot of these digital deals that are going down, there's a reason why Bomani Jones is not at the Ringer. There's a reason why Bomani Jones is not at freaking Meadowlark. And it's because their perception of themselves in the marketplace, rightly or wrongly, is that they are on the same level as them. There's a reason why
Right.
Stephen A. Smith's not going to cut a deal with the Ringer. Stephen A. Smith will say, "Hey, I'm as big as Bill Simmons, and I
Right.
can
I'd
build my
say,
own."
yeah, I would say Bomani's definitely wrong. But
Yeah,
whatever.
he
That's
could
not
be.
that's not your point. Yeah.
My point is, I think Candace Owens sees herself on the same level as Ben Shapiro,
Sure.
and
And
unlike
her ceiling
yeah,
probably sees herself as higher.
yes, and unlike Jordan Peterson, who I think his primary motivation is different. I think it's money with Peterson. It's money, and he does have these belief system that he wants to get out. He has his perspective he wants to share, but it's that and money. I don't think Peterson. I think Peterson likes being famous, but he doesn't like it as much as Candace Owens does. I think fame in the stature of Candace Owens as a figure is Candace Owens's primary motivation. And I think that's hard to do under somebody else's umbrella.
Sure. Sure. So she was always going to get too big for them.
No, I don't think she was. That's the thing. I think it's a false self-perception. I think she could easily stand in a world next to Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. I think she thinks she's that.
Hmm.
And as long as she thinks she's that, it's not going to work in that world. It's going to she'll have to be within a Fox News world, something larger. She'll have to cut a deal like Megyn Kelly did with Sirius XM.
Okay.
So it would in order for her to work in that kind of circumstance. So I think that's why it didn't work. And I before we move on, I'd like to show you one last bit because I thought this was very telling. This is Ben Shapiro. He appeared on Piers Morgan's show, and this was very interesting.
One of the consequences of this war has been a lot of very high passions on both sides, a lot of angry disagreements. You and your company have been at the center of a very high-profile one at the moment with Candace Owens, who's now left Daily Wire. Was she fired, or did she leave of her own volition?
I'm not going to speak to this topic, Piers.
At all?
At all.
You can't give me any insight into why she departed?
No hints, no nothing. I'm not going to speak to this.
Can I ask why?
I mean, you can ask.
No, I'm not. You can ask why you don't want to say anything.
Again, you can ask.
That's a great question, by the way. It didn't work, but it's a great question.
A staunch defender of free speech you are.
Before we go for it, what was it a great question?
Because, I mean, some people would fall for it. Some people would. Ben Shapiro was very good at remaining tight-lipped, but a lot of times when people say they're not going to talk about something, they do want to say something, or they're sort of bubbling over, and you can try to get at it another way. But he clearly doesn't want to say anything. But it's worth a shot, you know? Well, can I ask you why you won't say anything? And then you'll get, then they'll start getting going and they'll say too much.
I think this continues to get interesting.
And it would surprise me if it had been someone's opinions that would make you want to part company with them. However contentious.
Suffice it to say, the only thing I will say is what I've said all along with regard to Candace or with regard to any of our other hosts. I am not in hiring and firing position with the Daily Wire. I'm a co-founder of the Daily Wire. I'm a co-owner of the Daily Wire. I'm not actually in management. Jeremy Boring and Caleb Robinson are in management positions with regard to Candace or anyone else. And as far as the free speech situation, what I will say is that no company has the obligation to literally pay anyone. The Daily Wire is a publisher. It is not a platform. I've never called for Candace or anyone else for that matter to be banned from YouTube, to be banned from X, to be banned from any platform. That's a different story, obviously, when it comes to any publisher. Any publisher gets to make decisions about what it wishes to purvey and not.
I mean, I'm just not going to labor this, but one more point I would make is it's been reported extensively that the reason for her departure was because her comments have been perceived by people at the Daily Wire as anti-Semitic.
Again, I'm not going to comment on this, Piers.
I find this interesting for a couple reasons.
Well, he basically admitted it.
What he did. Yes. Your point that Piers asked a perfect question did lead to him basically admitting, making a non-admission admission.
Yep.
That hey, we don't have to have people on that we disagree with.
Yep. Totally.
It's true, but it also I think is really bad branding.
I was just gonna say it undermines their brand.
Really? You think it undermines their brand?
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you. As you were saying that, I was like, it's true. You can do that. But when you position yourself, as the Daily Wire has, as the voice of, especially over the last decade, where conservatives have been afforded all this latitude to posture as the free speech wing of American politics, which we know they haven't been that, but they've convinced themselves, I think, that they are, in large part. When that's your fucking brand, oh, we're saying all the things that are not allowed to be said, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, actually, we've got this thing we don't want our host to say. No, I think Shapiro did exactly what Piers Morgan was hoping and expecting he would, that he would let something surface, even though he's like, no, I'm not talking about it. First he's like, oh, I'll pass the buck. This is not my decision, but we don't have an obligation to platform people we don't agree with. Boom. That tells you everything. Fucking goal, put Piers on the scorecard for a goal. I thought that was great.
It makes me wonder if this kind of media is maturing into, maybe maturing is not the right word, but moving into another phase where they no longer care about that kind of branding, where they feel that we speak to something else, something larger, something where we're sort of not living up to those principles, like free speech, like having, civil disagreement, that kind of thing, all the intellectual dark web stuff that Ben Shapiro used to espouse, back on the Rogan show and with the Weinstein brothers and all that jazz.
No, he's like, no, fuck it. Now we got our Juggalo camp and we can kick you out if we want.
Yeah. And I wonder, is that the Daily Wire changing? It is a much bigger company than it was back then. Or is that just the media landscape changing? And I can make arguments for both.
Yeah, and I would say I don't know. I mean,
the argument. Go ahead.
No, please.
My argument for the media landscape changing is it goes back to the very beginning of this conversation, as I talked about how things have gotten tighter, how the acceptance of outside opinions inside of media outlets has gotten tighter, and that it's just like we're not even going to have we're not even going to consider having some other opinion outside of our own in our world, because yes, it is a world that we own, in a world that a juggalo camp that we can command.
Right.
So
And
there's that.
Initially any juggalo camp is, hey, come here where you're welcome because you're outside of you're a misfit everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But once the camp gets going and you get enough people, now you can be deemed a misfit and get the fuck out of here.
Without a doubt. Like they're no longer in the growth phase. Maybe they believe that that they have their core. They can get bigger, but they have their core. And because of the nature of the marketplace in terms of media, where Joe Rogan can be massive, averaging somewhere around 10 to 20 million listeners, and be the number one show basically in America, I could definitely, if you take out sports, pretty much number one in America. That, you know, Shapiro himself gets a few million a day, and that's just Shapiro. They have, I know in terms of subscribers, the last number I remember off the top of my head was somewhere around 2 million. Not a ton, but that's not counting all of the podcast subscribers, which are many, 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 many more. And the podcast subscribers, you talk about Matt Walsh, of all these cats, Jordan Peterson, all of them. Maybe they're thinking, hey, we are at a saturation point, because of the way media is, where it's infinite and incredibly narrow. There's not much more of these other people, these outside voices that we feel comfortable with, or that will come into our juggalo camp. It's about sustaining our juggalo camp and building around our juggalo camp, making our camp bigger and more comfortable for our people and their kids and their families, and nobody else. That's
and
one scenario.
making the boundaries around it much more clear and shiny and bright. And this is where the fence is, and we know we're not venturing outside that sheep's pen because we're safe here with each other. I mean, I would never have expected Ben Shapiro to be a good faith or capable of good faith entertainer of divergent viewpoints, or even capable. He's not cognitively capable. I think he's just, especially on Israel, you know, like I've never found his arguments to be in good faith on anything, or even worthwhile on anything. He's complete 100% bluster, snowflake also. And so that guy is not going to have much dissent within his own ranks, you know, whereas if I were designing a news media entity or a media entity, I want friction, and I want some, I mean, there's certain things I don't find palatable too. I think we're all, but I also have an attraction to certain things that I find unappetizing too. So it's like, it would be built in. Shapiro's not going to do that, but especially not with Israel. So it doesn't surprise me at all. I think this is more of, yes, I think there's a bigger picture issue that you're right to identify, but I also think a company with his stamp on it, even if he claims he's not doing the hiring and the firing, is going to have a particular narrowness that maybe we shouldn't necessarily diagnose everything else, but there are other people like this who have their pet aversions, and no, I want to stick my head in the sand. I don't want to hear anything else on that. And, you know, we're all to some degree in charge of our own fiefdoms now, even if they're small. And when they're bigger, you can make these sort of calculations. I kind of feel like they should have made the calculation, well, hey, it's good for business if we keep her on. Right? Like let the content let them argue all fucking day long. Like it's good. It's going to attract people. But maybe they're thinking people would have lost trust in what they wanted from the Daily Wire.
Well, that fits into my other possibility, and I think it's likely a combination of these two things. But this is my other guess here. The Daily Wire is giant, but it's not Fox News. It's not the New York Times. It's not ESPN. It's not MSNBC. They can't survive the loss of Ben Shapiro. I think that the people online are right to look at him and like, we've been hearing him talk this certain way as a certain figure for a long time, and they can't. And if it came down to it, would the Daily Wire pick Candace Owens or Ben Shapiro? They're picking Ben Shapiro. He's much bigger as a figure. His content gets more attention. All that.
He defines their brand more too at its heart, I think.
Without a doubt. So if you're Fox News, you can survive the loss of Tucker Carlson, the loss of Megyn Kelly, the loss of Bill O'Reilly, and countless others. If you're NBC, you can lose Matt Lauer, you can lose Katie Couric. Obviously, different reasons, different situations, different time periods, but you could survive the loss of those. Brian Williams is another one. You could survive. That was a controversy, giant one back in the day. If you're MSNBC, you can survive the loss of Keith Olbermann when he was your number one guy, and you can move on, and your audience stays with you. That's not so in the digital world. When you establish a very large audience, it's attached to a person.
Yep. And a personality.
And a personality.
Right. And yeah, not to cut you off, because actually the person can also lose that audience by drifting from what they initially served. It doesn't even have to be somebody else choosing between one or the other. A
certain amount of audience capture is required.
Right.
So it's quite possible that, hey, whether it's through soft power or actual power, Ben Shapiro is like, hey, I don't want to be here in a place with a person like that. And my contract's coming up at some certain point a little bit down the line. He doesn't have to say a damn word more than that. Or his people, his representatives don't have to. Also, there's the element of, from what I was reading online, Candace's contract is coming up relatively soon anyway. She's going to want a lot of money. Would you give a lot of money to someone who isn't jiving with the kind of world you want to create on your platform?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if the friction doesn't sell, I guess no.
I think it's quite possible that yes, this is it, that a bit of both scenarios I laid out happened here, where hey, her contract's coming up. All this stuff is coming up with the friction between these Daily Wire figures, and they decide to pull the trigger and move on. And it's them thinking, hey, like we can't afford to go stray too far from the brand that we built around Ben Shapiro, and we can allocate those 5, 6, 7, whatever many millions of dollars she's going to want to some other project, or to build another Matt Walsh, or build another Brett Cooper, or these other people, and do it on the cheap instead of paying through the nose for someone like Candace.
Yeah, to homegrown talent, to develop talent on their own turf instead of.
And that also speaks to something that we've talked about in other conversations, where you asked about, like, we talked about sort of some of my experiences in newsrooms and etc. When you home grow talent, that talent usually stays within the parameters that you taught them. So homegrown talent will adhere to the orthodoxy that they believe in.
Yep. Yeah, and even if they don't believe it, they know where their bread is buttered.
Yes. And they'd be a lot less likely to go on their own.
Mm-hmm. To rock the boat and cause a situation where they and most of that homegrown talent, the company would have the leverage, because it's like, well, we made you, unless the person gets so big. But even, we talk about Stephen A all the time. Even he is not going to have nearly as much leverage as I think he wants to, even though he's their biggest.
Yeah. That was another thing. I don't think we're going to get to it today, but that's another thing that he is like, look, he is the dutiful. And I think this is partly why I think Disney will give him his money. He is the dutiful servant to that corporation.
Totally. You know what's funny is Ethan Strauss pointed out, I forgot who he was talking to. Was it Ryan? And I always forget his name.
Russillo?
You know who I'm talking about? No. Glass-Steagall.
Glass-Steagall. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was talking to him. He said that Glass-Steagall, I think it was Glass-Steagall who said it's actually they always tout Stephen A as like the biggest. But Pardon the Interruption actually does more numbers. Is what they said. So
yeah, it does. I mean, on a given, on average, for sure. And on a day-to-day basis, like part of its day part, you're talking about late afternoon. You talk about 5:30 versus 10 a.m. It's like your limit is going to be different.
They mentioned that too.
But
yes.
But yeah, Pardon the Interruption usually beats him. But here's the thing about Pardon the Interruption. Those guys are in their 60s, going on. I think maybe Wilbon's in his 50s still, but Mr. Tony is quickly approaching 70 versus something like Stephen A, who's what, 50 something. Like he's older
than I am, but yeah,
he's got a longer runway. So keeping him in house, it's for me, it's more like the Shannon Sharp scenario, when you have a younger guy that's coming, that's shown you something. Keeping him under contract is smart.
Yeah, even though Stephen A is the Sean King of college basketball.
Yes, because they don't actually care about sports.
No, but the fact that he never actually, he never actually played and all that brouhaha over his, lying about his college basketball career, which really wasn't. I wonder, I think if I'm just using my hunches, and I don't know nearly as much about how this all works as much as you've looked into it, I'm sensing that is going to be a rocky negotiation, and that because Stephen A will overinflate his value to the company, and I don't think he's gonna. I don't think things are going to end well between him and them. Well, if somebody named E.M. Case is on the case, That's all we need. Yes, Diddy did it.
Yes,
Speaking of
I agree. Puff has been sus.
Speaking of that, I was going to mention, you talked about Laurel Canyon and you talked about government infiltrating rap music. I mean, we didn't even mention Gary Webb and Ricky Freeway Ricky Ross, and going back to Whitlock. I love how Whitlock sounds like somebody's like grandparent, like saying rap music is like the scourge. But I mean, I noticed a long time ago. I'm talking about in the 90s. I remember when DMX was on the cover of Rolling Stone. And I just remember having this feeling. And this is nothing against DMX, but I was like, why are these magazines, would they put like a black physicist or even Wynton Marsalis on their cover? Somebody who presents differently than that. I'm not saying anything against DMX, but like, why is this so manicured and tailored to one specific kind of voice in rap that the mainstream media loves putting out there? And this gets into that whole the secret meeting that shook, that whole letter thing. But I mean, is it that far-fetched to at least consider whether this wasn't engineered to some degree to feed into the prison system? And, at that time there was a profit in privatization of prisons, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, still those are public institutions, sure.
And there is something gross about it. And, it's funny because I looked up articles on Gary Webb in the Village Voice, and I found one that was like both trying to paint him out to be like this deadbeat dad, but also defend his reporting at the same time. And that's pretty, like, if what he says and what the real Ricky Ross, not the fucking fat, champagne, rapper guy.
Yeah.
But if what they say is even remotely true, I mean, that shit is yucky. It's like real gross, like dealing crack. The allegation is dealing crack to make money to fund the Contras in Central America. It's like, so we're supposed to be upset about Diddy. I don't know. And if Diddy is in bed with those people who are willing to go to those lengths, right? Like, then why wouldn't they cut him loose at some point? Now I sound like I'm on Patrick Bet-David show. It's like all this unsubstantiated speculation, right? But like the whole Gary Webb thing, it should, you're not going to see that documentary, or maybe there is one, but I don't think you're going to see that documentary on Netflix anytime soon.
All right. Look, I think there needs to be a Patrick Bet-David special. By the way, I've done some digging and I found some very interesting, pretty sus. I mean, the guy basically runs a multi-level marketing company.
I think I've seen the same exact video you're talking about, where there's this like British YouTuber that exposes. Yes, I know.
And he's been interviewed directly about it and asked about it directly, and he danced. I can't believe he did the interview, but he did, and he danced and danced and danced and danced, and it looks pretty bad.
He's pretty
By the way,
oily.
I'm throwing away that value tape money. I'm throwing it away. Like the value tape money, I have just, pissing it away left and right.
What do you mean?
Oh yeah, because we'd be signed to Valuetainment. That'd be on,
Oh
that
yeah. No. I mean, I I grudgingly like his podcast. I've gone back and forth on it. I initially liked it, then I was initially like, ugh, it's basically it should be called trashy-tainment.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it's like trash junk food. It's like pork rinds or like deep fried chicken poppers or something. It's like Popeye's chicken. It's like deep fried. It's like fatty and salty and gross, but it's tasty, right? But as trying to posture as somebody who like breaks down ideas and brings anything useful to conversations, the show almost does that in spite of him.
Yeah. I don't think he's grifter.
A friend of mine described him as like the kid in class who always tries to sound like he knows, like he's smart and knows what the teacher says, tries to say what the teacher wants to seem more on top of the subject, than he really is. Like, he totally strikes me as that. The one thing I do like about his interviewing style, though, that I've noticed that I'll give him a ton of credit for, he does speak to people, everybody, in this very sort of even, respectful way. No matter what you say on there that is like fucking crazy. Now, he's trying to get you to say something for clicks, of course. But he has a way of like conveying respect to the interview subject that I really like. And the next time I get an opportunity to like do one of these workshops, I'll use one of his clips as an example. I do really like that, for whatever that's worth.
I find no value at all. I don't enjoy it at all.
No valuetainment.
Yeah, no value in valuetainment. It's not like it's not
It's
for me. It's just terrible.
It's very terrible. Predictable. You're like valuetainment is like the dollar menu of podcasts. You get that like little chicken sandwich. You get that little chicken sandwich from all the
New Yorkers. I think you're a disgrace
to
all Americans and New Yorkers. I think you're a disgrace to all Americans and New Yorkers.
Who is that?
That's a clip. I think, if I remember correctly, that was a clip that I found from a news interview. It was like a man on the street interview about Rudy Giuliani.
Okay.
And it was,
don't apologize. You're a scoundrel.
My bad. Wrong one.
I think you're a disgrace to all Americans and New Yorkers.
That one.
Don't apologize. You're a scoundrel.
That's Phil Hoffman.
Okay. Well, on that note, we will try to be more than the dollar menu of.
I hope we provide more than a dollar menu here.
The dollar menu, but yeah, I mean, I would recommend people check out the Gary Webb book, Dark Alliance, and
sure,
form your own. I mean, I wonder whether Freeway Ricky wasn't pulling our fucking leg too about all that shit, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, on the other side of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting. He'd be worth analyzing.
And why, if it's like, here's the thing that I always found suspicious about him. If he's talking about all this nefarious, shady, deep state, what then would have been referred to as deep state, but like government, conspiratorial behavior, why does he have a fucking podcast? Like it's so weird.
Maybe or Freeway Ricky.
No, Ricky had a podcast for a while.
Because you can't stop someone from a podcast.
Yeah, but it's maybe the effect of those things being out there in the culture more is strangely to numb people.
Maybe. I don't think it's. I think you're overthinking it.
I don't know, man. Some of the people he was rolling with, he claims to have rolled with, are pretty.
Yeah, but we're talking long, long ago. Most of these people aren't around anymore. Like the people who were, that were involved in that trade are no longer involved with that trade, and most are now no longer breathing, nor are the people who were around them.
Okay.
Usually, that's why you can be, once you go away to jail for a while, you can come out and start over because the people you had beef with are no longer around.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know how long the intelligence community would hold you to whatever.
Oh,
But
you're
I'm
talking
just
about the
saying,
intelligence community.
yeah, I'm just saying, yes, I'm just saying, like we
I don't
should
think they
take
care.
what he says.
I don't think they care.
Okay. I'm just saying we should take what Freeway Ricky says with a grain of salt too.
Okay.
And what
All
Gary
right.
Webb said, and what the government, like all of it. It's like we don't know. It's kind of like what we were saying about the climate change conversation. Like if each spoke is like a circus tent and they're all saying wild outlandish things, maybe the truth is somewhere less outlandish. You know what I'm saying? That's all. It's like how do you even know how to make sense of all this stuff? So, but on that note, I should want to go listen to one of his podcasts.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me as always.
All right. Be well.
Yeah, you too.